Let's look at the supply and demand of money together on the same graph. Let's take a minute to review the structure of the money supply and demand for money graph. The horizontal or back and forth axis represents the quantity of money. As one moves from left to right, the quantity of money increases. The vertical or up and down axis represents the interest rate. Remember that the interest rate is really a measure of the cost or price of money. As one moves from the bottom of the graph to the top of the graph, the interest rate, that is the price or cost of money, increases. Now remember that the demand for money is a downward sloping because at higher interest rates, individuals in the economy want to hold fewer dollars. And when the interest rates are low, individuals want to hold more dollars. Finally, remember that the supply of money is always fixed by the central bank. The point where the money supply crosses the demand curve for money is the equilibrium point. In this example, the equilibrium point is named E0. The 0 in the name indicates that this is a starting equilibrium point. If a line is drawn from the equilibrium point to the interest axis, in this example we find the interest rate is 9%. If a line is drawn from the equilibrium point, or we follow the money supply curve from the equilibrium point down to the quantity of money axis, we see that the equilibrium quantity of money is $6 billion. Here's a similar graph to the previous one, which is drawn the way economists like to draw this graph. Once again, the point where the money supply crosses the demand curve for money is called the equilibrium point. In this example, the equilibrium point is named E0. The 0 in the name indicates that this is the starting equilibrium point. If a line is drawn from the equilibrium point to the interest rate axis, in this example, we find that the equilibrium interest rate is IE. If a line is drawn from the equilibrium point, or we follow the money supply curve from the equilibrium point down to the quantity of axis, we see that the equilibrium quantity of money is ME. And any interest rate above the equilibrium interest rate of 9%, there will exist a surplus of money in the economy. At any interest rate below the equilibrium point of 9%, there will exist a shortage of money in the economy. Let's look at surpluses and shortages the way the economist likes to look at this. Notice that we have an equilibrium interest rate of I sub E. Any point above I sub E is going to have a surplus of money in the economy, and any interest rate below I sub E, there will be a shortage of money in the economy because of excess demand for the money. For example, if our interest rate is 15%, then we need to draw a line from the point at where the 15% interest rate crosses the demand curve to the quantity of money axis. In this example, the place where the 15% rate crosses the demand curve is at $3 billion. If the Federal Reserve, however, has supplied $6 billion, and since consumers only want $300 billion, there's an excess supply of $300 billion. The only way for the surplus to be delimited is to let the interest rate drop down to 9%. Let's look and see how the economist views this. If the interest rate is I1, then we need to draw a line from that point where I1 crosses the demand curve for money to the quantity of money axis. In this example, the place where I1 interest rate crosses the demand curve is at M1. The Federal Reserve, however, has supplied ME dollars to the economy. Since consumers only want M1 and ME is further along the quantity of money axis, you remember that this implies that ME is greater than M1, there is an excess supply of money. Let's see how this might be, excess of supply might be eliminated. 9%. To So how can the shortage be eliminated so that the supply of money and the demand for money are once again in equilibrium? Since the amount of money supplied is fixed, the only way to get back to equilibrium is for the interest rate to increase to 9%. Let's take a look and see how an economist would like to draw this diagram. Once again, if our interest rate is at I1, we need to draw a line from that point to where the interest rate crosses the demand curve for money down to the quantity of money axis. The Federal Reserve, however, supplied ME. Since consumers want M1 and ME is to the left of M1 on the quantity of money axis, you remember that this implies that ME is smaller than M1. There's an excess demand for money or a shortage of money in the economy. How can this shortage be eliminated so that the supply of money and the demand for money are once again in equilibrium? Since the amount of money supplied is fixed, the only way to get back to equilibrium is to let the interest rate increase to IE. Once the interest rate is increased to IE, the supply of money and the demand for money will be once again in equilibrium.